Hi, welcome to episode 32 of the Woke-ish podcast. This is Ebony.
And this is Alma.
And this week we are discussing how to say no.
Yes.
So if you're anything like Zelma or I, you do not like conflict, you probably have a hard time saying no and probably find yourself in situations that you don't really want to be in because you knew when you said yes to it that you did not want to be there.
Yes.
And yet there you sit, miserable, wishing that you were at home binge watching Narcos on Netflix. So, yeah, we're going to talk about that. But before we get there, we will start with our shout-out segment.
Yes. And so our first shout-out goes to Frank Scott Jr., who became Little Rock, Arkansas's first elected Black mayor. Mm-hmm. And so the elected is important because, and I had to look this up because I didn't understand, but apparently, technically, he is Little Rock's third Black mayor, but he's the first to be voted by the voters. How did the other one slide in there? Because apparently, the two other Black mayors, Charles Bussey and Lottie Shackelford, were chosen for the job by board members and not voters. So
nice
like,
little loophole.
Yeah. So I don't know when that happens. Like maybe one of the mayors who was voted in had to resign and they had to get someone. Mm-hmm. But he's the first. So that's why even though he's technically the third, he's the first elected Black mayor. Because I didn't want people to be like, that's not true. There's been two other ones. But what makes it this one a milestone is that so he won the popular vote, like people in Little Rock, Arkansas. Yeah. He defeated his opponent Baker Curris with 58% of the vote following Tuesday's runoff election. So they had, when a runoff election happens, when like people don't win enough of a certain number, because there's, usually more than two people running for, office. Mm-hmm. And so, the two people who got the highest votes, then they too go to the runoff election. Mm-hmm. And so this is what happened here because this is a result of the midterm elections. So that's why it's happening way into December because this is a runoff. Either way, shout out to Frank Scott Jr. for becoming the first elected Black mayor, and shout out to Little Rock, Arkansas for voting, for history, and just wanted to kind of, I love still getting these trickle of good news from the midterm elections. Yeah. And then the second shout out is just to everyone out there who's finishing up another semester, whether it's a semester of undergrad, semester of grad school, semester of community college, especially if this is your first semester in a new program. I know right now a lot of people are finishing the classes and wrapping up finals. And so just wanted to remind you, like every semester is an accomplishment and you should definitely like take some time to relax and give yourself a pat on the shoulder because school is definitely at whatever stage you are. If you're working full time, doing school, like I know some people out there are, if you're just doing school, if you're only doing a semester here or there, whatever it is, like doing school is really taxing. Yeah. As we talked about in our episode last week about our In the Know topic about anxieties from school. So shout out to everyone finishing and go relax before you start up again next year.
Yeah. And for those who are entering their like final year of school and they just have one more semester of college, enjoy it, live it up, do not take it for granted because man, do I miss college.
Yes.
Okay, and so our last shout out goes to Viola Davis, who will star as Shirley Chisholm in a new movie called The Fighting Shirley Chisholm. So this will be the first project for Davis under the new First Look deal that Juvie Production, so this is the company that she co-heads with her husband, Julius Tenon, recently signed with Amazon. So this is like the first project under that. So just want to give you a little bit of info about who Shirley Chisholm is in case you don't know so that you understand why this is such a big deal. So Shirley Chisholm was an American politician, educator, and author. In 1968, she became the first Black woman elected to the United States Congress, and she represented New York's 12th congressional district for 7 terms from 1969 to 1983. In 1972, she became the first Black candidate for a major party's nomination for President of the United States, and the first woman to run for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. So you see there, I mean, she used a lot of firsts. So like first Black, first woman, first Black woman. So yeah, she paved the way for tons and tons of folks that you see running for office today. And Viola Davis will be making history by playing her in a new movie. So shout out to Viola.
Yeah.
Okay, so now for our In the Know segment.
So our first story is about Kareem Hunt. And if you guys are boycotting the NFL, you may not be super invested in Kareem Hunt. I know it's sad because when I was reading the news about this, so many people were like, oh my god, because he's a really good player for a really good team, like a team that might make it to the Super Bowl. And so people were like, oh my gosh, my fantasy, oh my gosh, like aside from just like...
It's so funny to me when people say that. It's like, yeah, okay, his life,
yeah,
but my team.
So if you guys haven't seen videos, heard of this, or been on in social media, Kareem Hunt is a running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, and a recent video was released which shows what I consider an assault.
Yes.
And so video surfaced of Hunt kicking and pushing a white woman after he claims she called him racial slurs and hit him first. She's a 19-year-old woman who allegedly, he said, used racial epithets, and argues that caused him to kick her out of the room that they were occupying. In the video, you then see that he proceeds to push a man into her, among other things, knocking her over, and then in one particular instance kicks her while she was down. Although there's a lot of like pushing and...
He kicked her over. Like she's like kneeling. She's like bent down, but on kind of like her tippy toes, and then he kicks her over.
Yeah, she's already like down.
Yeah.
So you can see the video on Instagram, see for yourself, but... In an interview after the video was released, Hunt says, honestly, I just wanted to let the world know how sorry I am for my actions. You know, it's been a tough time for me. I'm extremely embarrassed because of that video. I regret the entire thing, and I'm going to take the time to, you know, like I said, better myself and learn from this. I realized what I did once I saw the video, and it was really tough to watch. So I think maybe he was drunk. He said if he could speak with the woman, I'd want to tell her right now that I am sorry for my actions that night. So this is video. So the video was recently released, but the incident happened in February in a Cleveland hotel hallway. And so TMZ released the video last Friday. And then that's why all this came out.
So he wasn't fired until...
No,
okay.
And that's, you know, part of the story is that, so far Hunt has not been charged, but the video, which shows Hunt shoving the woman several times and kicking her as others tried to hold him back, made the NFL place Hunt, initially the NFL placed Hunt on the commissioner exempt list, preventing him from playing, practicing, or attending games. So he was still part of the roster, he just wasn't playing, but that's what the NFL said. But then his team later released a statement confirming they were severing ties with him. And the team said it had been made aware of the incident earlier in the year. Management had spoken with Hunt, but the video made clear that he was, quote unquote, not truthful in those discussions. So the Redskins, just like Ray Rice, the Redskins are saying they knew about it, but they didn't know it was that bad, which is the exact same thing they said about.
Which is the exact same thing they'll continue to say.
So now it comes to like the controversy. I mean, for some people, the debate wasn't that bad. If you look at the video, it was bad.
Yeah, the video, yeah. So seeing the video, I was like, oh my gosh. And then, like, literally narrating as I was watching, like, oh my god, he pushed her. Oh my god, he came back and pushed her again. Yeah. Oh my gosh, now he's kicking her. You know, these are my thoughts, right? So it sucks that he is getting fired. But I have to think, trying to remove race from this, because those are the terms that I think in, right? I think in racial terms, always. And so there have been a bunch of white women that have been doing and white women and men that have been doing, you know, very sus things over the past, year or so, and they've been getting fired. Like, period. You know, and I haven't felt any kind of remorse for them. So can I feel remorseful for a guy who's like beating up on a woman? Now, I think the difficult part, which I've said in other episodes of the podcast, when it comes to like sexual assault, which, I mean, this is physical assault, but also in terms of sexual assault, I do feel differently about situations where both parties are intoxicated. So whether they be drunk or high or whatever. Now, she was clearly drunk in this video. Very clearly. Like, she was having a hard time standing, even when she was on her, like, you know, upright on her 2 feet. And if he's being truthful in these interviews and he didn't remember what he did, then and because they were having like a little party or whatever, they were in a hotel room and they were coming out of the hotel room to fight in the hallway. So the fact that they were having a party in their hotel room and drinking and doing whatever else, you know, makes me feel like, you know, it's kind of hard because he wasn't in his right mind necessarily. So that's kind of hard to, I mean, and then for his team to be like, oh, he didn't keep it, you know, 100 with us. He told us that this is what happened and this is actually what happened. It's like, maybe that's what he recalled. That's, you know, maybe he was too drunk to actually remember everything that happened. And so based on his memory, it wasn't as bad as what it actually was. Yeah. So I don't know. That's hard.
Yeah. So some people are calling for a lifetime ban. That means for the rest of his life, he will never be able to play football again. Wow, other people are just calling for a suspension. And I just like think about, I mean, there are like Ben Roethlisberger. He is currently a quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers who has been actually like accused of sexual assault. Yet he still plays. And it's just kind of like, and then there are other quarterbacks. I think it's
the tapes though.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
It's like
how does TMZ get these tapes?
I don't know. They pay people a lot of money.
The other one too was TMZ.
But then I remember when the other one
got fired.
Yeah, he got fired. But he's like, you know what? Do I care? Like they paid me $50,000 for this tape or whatever they paid. You know, so it's like if I'm only making $10 an hour, like what? Yes, you can pay me $50,000 for this tape.
That's true.
And so, yeah, I think it's pretty hard when it's on tape. It's like one thing to be accused, you know, but when they have proof, I mean, I don't know if I would say a lifetime ban because a lot of these athletes do a lot, not just in terms of sexual assault, but physical assault. Like they get into shit all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then I think it's also like how you were saying before we started recording, you were talking about CTE.
Yeah.
Which we have talked about in, you know, other episodes as well. And I think that makes it really murky too. That complicates it. Like, I don't think that the NFL should be able to put a lifetime ban on anybody. Now, if teams think, oh, you know, the pros don't outweigh the cons, like, you are too much of a risk for us to employ, you know, and so the fact that you're this, like, star athlete doesn't matter. And, you know, I think that teams should be able to decide that on their own.
Yeah.
Like, we can't, like, for instance, with, I don't know, who are these people? Like, the lady a few weeks ago that was, taunting the people at the Andrew Gillum, protest or whatever. A real estate company can't reach out to the real estate bureau or something and say, this woman there's a lifetime ban on her. She can never work at any real estate company again. No, it's like, we're firing her. Now, if she goes elsewhere and they hire her, that's their business. And I feel like it should work similarly in the NFL. This is my argument, that they should not be able to say no team can hire him because that should be up to the team.
Yeah. I mean, he was on the road to potentially get a Super Bowl ring. He's no longer going. If a team picks him up, it's not going to be the Chiefs or the Rams, which, in my opinion, are the two that are going to go to the Super Bowl. But I also feel a certain type of way about doing a lifetime ban just for all those reasons. The CTE, the fact that he hasn't been charged. Yeah. The fact that there are currently people, like, there's someone on the Dallas Cowboys team that I can't remember right now, but also another running back that has been accused of domestic violence, and yet he's still playing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people actually have charges of domestic violence on the NFL rosters, and it's just kind of like, but I think you're right, like, because of the video, people have to pay attention to it. But I thought, like, in court, like, that stuff, I don't know. I feel like if he gets fined or has to do time, like, that's a separate issue than whether he should be banned from football.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I wish that I think that it's gonna happen. You know, I would say probably within the next decade. Not fast enough, and it sucks that there will have been so many people that will have suffered by then. But there needs to be something structurally that happens with the NFL as far as CTE is concerned, because it's unfair. Like, these are the people that suffer. You know, they suffer in more ways than one. So not just in terms of their health, but also in terms of, like, their quality of life.
Yeah.
You know, like, socially. So if because you have all these head injuries, you're prone to more violence, and say that's what's going on here. I mean, I don't know, but say that is, and his head injury is the reason that he's being so violent. Now he's losing his job and potentially a lifetime ban. And that's going to affect his life, period.
Yeah.
And it's not even his fault. Like, the owners of these teams, they don't suffer.
Yeah.
They don't suffer physically the way that the players do. They don't suffer there's no blow to them, their social lives, their image, their reputation, because of their players that have CTE. Like, they don't lose anything. And I think there's a real imbalance of power there.
Yeah, and I think, just to remind people, like, the particular position that he plays is one of the most vulnerable because they're most likely to get injured, because, the quarterback has people defending him.
Yeah.
Running backs do not.
Yeah.
And so their job literally is to try to make touchdowns.
Yeah,
and so
try not to get hit.
Everyone is trying to hit them.
Yeah.
And even if you don't, like, break their legs or whatever, like, getting tackled, for literally every play you make, people are tackling. Like, that's the only way you stop.
And it's not just like, oh, we hit you. And no, it's literally like, okay, now all the linemen got to pile on top of you.
Yeah. And then, like, keep doing it for 4 quarters and then do it every week. And so, I don't know, that, and I don't know. So, and then also the fact that she also did hit him. I'm not saying that women deserve, if women hit you, then you deserve to hit them. But I think that, we consider assault spitting on someone. If you spit on someone, that's considered assault. And so I think that if people were charged, he should be charged, but so should she, because she also assaulted him.
Yeah.
And I think that we just have to be fair in doing that as well, because if we're saying all violence is bad, then it doesn't make it okay just because she's a woman that she hit him.
Especially in this era, and again, he didn't, like, punch her. It wasn't like that. It was like, kind of pushing you, like, like a shove, kind of. But I think, somebody said something to me recently, like, in an interview, one of the interviews that I was doing, like, dissertation interviews, the guy said, he was talking about double standards. And, and he was saying that he thinks that they're even more difficult to navigate in this era where, so many women are pushing for equality.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, no, do we recognize, period, that men on average tend to be stronger than women. That's on average, right? Obviously, there are lots of exceptions. So, do we think that a woman punching a guy is the equivalent of a guy punching a woman? No. But a woman, that doesn't mean that a woman gets to punch a guy, right? So there should be some kind of repercussions. Like, it shouldn't necessarily mean, oh, you punched me, I'm gonna punch you back, because clearly you're gonna do more damage. Yeah. But it should be that she's held to some kind of something. Like, there should be something that could happen. That's an assault. Yeah. Right? And so he was saying that, it seems that women, and I was like, I can't even argue with you, He was saying that it seems that women are against double standards that don't benefit them, but they're for double standards that do benefit them.
I think,
it's like, I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think that that's what's happening here is that, And I mean, maybe one way that he could, if that's an argument that he believes in and is sticking to, then maybe he should press charges. Mm. Because if she did something to him first, then maybe he should go as far as to, like, my life is not gonna be destroyed by myself. Yeah. Like, no. I mean, maybe if I'm going down, you're coming too.
Maybe that's why he didn't have any charges pressed against him.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming, he's got to have a really good agent because he's a really top player. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that's gotta have been floated around, like, okay, if you press charges, then we'll press charges as well for assault.
Yeah.
And that's just,
I don't know. I think I would take a more proactive rather than defensive.
Oh, that's what he's doing. He said,
like, I would be, like, I'm not gonna wait. Cause, like, if she presses charges and then you press charges, it looks like you're just doing it out of spite. Yeah. Rather than, like, oh, I legitimately feel like she was wrong in what she did. And if you feel that so much so that you're willing to make a case for it, you know, to the NFL, then you've lost your job.
Yeah.
Now, right now, the debate is whether or not you will ever be able to get a job playing football again.
Yeah.
So I would try to, make sure that I get in front of that if I were him.
Yeah.
So if anybody knows him that's listening, or if he's listening,
can you imagine?
Right?
We should tag him. So we'll definitely keep up with this story and see what happens, but definitely wanted to talk about that because it ties into so many past topics that we've talked about, including, double standards, violence amongst athletes, and also race, even though, you can't ignore the fact that it was a black guy assaulting a white woman. So our second story is, so you might have heard about the murder of Amantic Bradford, EJ, or otherwise known as EJ Bradford Jr. He was killed by police on Thanksgiving night. This is that mall shooting. And so the independent autopsy report, because the police have yet to release their autopsy report. So the family conducted an independent one, and it showed that he was shot 3 times off from behind during the incident at the Alabama Mall. So the lawyers for EJ's family released the results on Monday, saying that the results confirmed that he had been fleeing with his back turned at the time he was killed. Therefore, cops usually say, he was going to shoot at me. I was in fear of my life. If you're running away, how can you be a threat? So the autopsy was commissioned by the family, and it showed that Bradford had been shot in the head, the neck, and the lower back. It was the gunshot wound to the head that killed him, which concluded that the manner of death is homicide. So Bradford's father, Amantic Sr., used forceful words at a Monday news conference. He said, "My son was murdered by this officer, and that was cowardice." And his dad apparently is also a veteran. He said, shifting to address the absent officer, "You shot a 21-year-old person running away from gunfire. Never posed you a threat, never had nothing in his hand. Why did you shoot him? You can't explain that to me because that ain't training. That's cowardice. You're a coward." So far, the police department has refused to release the autopsy report along with the video of the murder, stating, quote unquote, it would be premature to do so. So they actually have the video. They're just not releasing it. Yet, I argue that it wasn't premature to have a press conference right after where the police said that EJ was the mall shooter and that the police officer who killed him was a hero. So it's kind of a double standard for me for the police to say, well, we're not going to release this because there's an ongoing investigation, when right after this happened, you said that he was the shooter, and you said that the cop who killed him was, saved everyone's life, saved more people's life. And it's like, if it's an ongoing investigation, then you shouldn't be talking about anything.
Yeah.
And so
when y'all don't know anything.
Yeah. And then try and put myself in the position of that family to be like, for a little while, people really thought your son was the bad guy.
Yeah.
And apparently, the person who actually committed the shooting was arrested last week.
Yeah. And so it was the crazy thing to me is that, okay, so ultimately, race aside, our police in this country are so poorly trained They have no skills whatsoever. No investigative skills, nothing. They just constantly live life on edge and on defense. A defense against what? You are the predator. So you killed the wrong person and left the actual mass shooter just floating around in the mall to be able to kill more people.
Yeah.
How ridiculous is that?
Yeah.
How ridiculous is that? And then you just kill the first black kid you see. Like, oh, must have been him. What? I mean, now, to bring race back into it, who usually are these mass shooters? What do they look like?
Yeah.
Like, they were probably just waiting for somebody black to do it. For somebody black to be the culprit. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, but that's not really a black thing. Like, what? We look at all these mass shooters. I just don't understand. And then, I mean, I do not see this case. I really fully see this police officer being acquitted. And the reason that I do is because I feel like for a jury, they're going to see this as a cop because all we think about are cops' fear, right? The cop was in fear. There was so much commotion, saw somebody running, he shot. Like, they're going to see that as credible. And that's because, like, you know, our juries also have no sense. And they constantly, you know, like the defense attorney is like one of their jobs is that they hire, you know, these consultants to help them, sift through people so that they can select the jury that will, you know, vote in their favor.
Yeah.
And I mean, which is terrible. It's like, so you're going to have this officer who's going to be able to go out shortly and continue working and with the same biases. Because whether we define this as racism or not, this is clear bias. Like, if you see someone whose skin is dark and you think, oh, that must be the killer, that's a problem. Yeah. That's a problem that you think that way and that you're a police officer.
Yeah.
And that you have the power to kill people with no repercussions.
Yeah, for a mistake.
And you have the cover of the police force. Yeah. You know,
Yeah, so we'll see. The family's going ahead and, you know, they got a lawyer, but it's just sad that they had to do their own autopsy report. But, I mean, it just shows you that you can't rely on the government or the police in all cases. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, if someone was robbing me, I wouldn't call the police. I'm just saying that there's a problem.
Well, I don't know. So this next story, right? So continuation of cops being so poorly trained. So a Vietnam vet kills an intruder, then cops show up and shoot him dead by mistake. Did you hear about this story?
No.
So a case of mistaken identity left a man dead after protecting his family from an invader. So officers were dispatched to an Aurora, Colorado home around 1:30 Monday morning. They heard gunshots coming from inside the house. Upon entering, officers saw a dead body laying on the bathroom floor and assumed he was the victim of the invasion. Then they saw Richard Gary Black, 73 years old. 73-year-old. This is a white man. 73-year-old white man standing in the living room, alive and armed. He was perceived as the perpetrator. So they opened fire and killed this man. Killed somebody's grandfather, who was not the invader, but was the homeowner. So
that's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, so apparently, like, a number of people were standing outside the home when cops arrived, including the Mr. Black's wife. And they're claiming that when the officers walked past her, she said he has a gun. And so then they assumed that, like, oh, this person with the gun must be the person that she's talking about. And so apparently he, you know, didn't die right away. So it says Black emerged shortly after with a gun in one hand and a flashlight in the other, standing by the front door. Officers commanded that he drop the weapon and put his hands up several times, but for whatever reason, he didn't drop the gun right away.
He's scared.
Yes,
he's 73,
and you're all pointing guns at him. You're pointing guns at him. His house was just invaded at 1:30 a.m.
Oh God!
Like, so he raised the flashlight, and it was then that an officer fired 4 rounds at him.
That's what gets me when they fire multiple. Because it's like if you're in fear, like, why not shoot them once? They're probably, at that point, hurt enough that you can subdue them. But no, overkill.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, like, the person that had broken in, like, attacked his grandson and, like, tried to drag him to the bathroom. And then that's when, like, he killed the intruder. And, yeah, I mean, it's just like, how many... You can't just... If I killed somebody by mistake, I couldn't just be like, oh, yeah, it was an accident. Like, you know, my bad. And then continue to live my life. No. Yeah. No. You still... They just call it something different, but you still do time.
Yeah.
Like, with... okay. And then, lastly, on the list of stupid things that our police do, maybe there may be a shred of hope. So... A Dallas jury has indicted Amber Geiger on murder charges for the murder of Botham Shem John, which happened back in September. I'm sure that y'all recall this because it was all over the place, all over social media, but just to jog your memory, so Botham Shem John was in his apartment. It was dark because it was night, and he
was probably fucking sleeping.
Yeah, and so he, I think, got up from whatever he was doing, because Amber Geiger was trying to break into his apartment. And when she finally did break in, she saw him and then shot and killed him in his apartment.
Yes.
And so she claimed after that, you know, she thought it was her apartment. Yeah. The door was already open. Yeah. She just walked in. She saw a male figure and shot him. And, so the Dallas jury has indicted her, and hopefully these charges stick.
Yeah, because they just voted in a new DA.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And I think the DA said that was like one of the first things on his, So, good. You know, it seems like whatever he's doing maybe is effective.
I mean, Dallas or that area recently actually found a cop guilty of the murder of that teenager.
Yeah.
So hopefully, there's precedent for a cop being charged and actually found guilty. Yeah. So we'll definitely keep you guys updated with all of these fucking police.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, like, they are just... So I want y'all to know that the United States is unique in terms of how little training our cops get, right? So our cops get, I want to say 21 weeks, which is, I'm really bad at math. It's like 6 months.
It's less than the time that it takes to make a baby.
Yeah. It's like six months where you're training someone on how to protect and serve, right? And they are supposed to have the capacity to evaluate a situation and know when to kill someone and when not to. Yeah. And when they kill someone my understanding is that when they kill someone, it's supposed to be like, oh, this person was literally like about to kill me.
Yeah.
So the whole, oh, resisted arrest. Oh, they were cussing at me. Oh, they hit me. Oh, they were running away. Those are not grounds to kill someone. Think about it this way. This is the simple way to think about it. If a person, say, was resisting arrest from a cop, right? And then the person was arrested and taken to jail. Could they get the death penalty for that? No. Which means that a cop should not be able to give them the death penalty.
Yeah.
Like, you should not be able to kill someone just because you feel like it.
Yeah.
No.
Or you made a mistake.
Yeah. No. You, and all your mistakes can't look suspicious. You can't be constantly killing black kids. Like, oh, that was by accident. Oh, I thought he had a gun. No. Like, what?
Yeah.
So there are other countries that I've, looked up. It's like Iceland, the UK, and a few other countries. Their police are trained for like 2 years, 3 years, and they don't have accidental killings. They don't even have intentional killings because the police are well trained. You know how in the movies you would see things like negotiators and stuff like that? When was the last time you heard of a cop negotiating something? No, they just kill people.
White mass shooters.
Yeah, white mass shooters constantly get taken in
Dylan Rue,
alive.
The guy who shot up the freaking
They be playing therapist with these people.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. But no, they just, I can't. Like, our cops are just such a disappointment. It's like so disappointing.
Yeah. And that's not to say there aren't good cops, but when we talk about institutions, we're talking about as a whole.
Yeah, and so I want to say the good cops are going against the grain. Yeah. Because it would be so easy for them to just be so, like, careless and reckless. Like, why, so I feel like the good cops are pushing themselves to be good when they don't have to. Yeah. Like, the bad cops are just doing, it's like, oh, I could get away with this. Why not? Yeah. Why not? And that's our culture right now. So, I mean, no, I don't doubt the fact that there are good cops out there. I understand that. But it's like, we don't, if there were, I don't know what an equivalent, like, say doctors. If doctors, if there were, like, tons of malpractice things going on, no, like, repercussions, nobody's being fired or anything. Like, and you're saying, oh yeah, like, doctors, they're pretty shitty, like, they're constantly killing people and all this stuff. The response is not gonna be, oh, but there are some good doctors. No, like, let's deal with the bad apples. Mm-hmm. Because people's lives are being lost unjustly, and it's not fair. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to their families. Like, this 21 years old. Yeah. 21 years old and 73. Yeah. And then how old was Botham? 26? Like, this is ridiculous. All these accidental killings, and there's no justice. I don't care if you did it by accident. You took somebody's life. Yeah. You took somebody's son, somebody's grandfather, somebody's husband. Like, you have to pay for that accident, because I don't get to just walk around with a gun and accidentally kill people.
And then nothing happened to
me. Yeah, no, I don't get to do that. So, no, you don't get to do that. You don't get to, oh, I'm so sorry, my deepest condolences. No, fuck that.
Yeah, just because you did 21 weeks of training.
Yeah, no,
I could be like, I did 7 years of grad school.
I've been in this, it's gonna take me 6 years to get my PhD, to go teach college students. For what? Is it that serious? No, it's not. Like,
it takes like, what, 12 years to become a doctor?
Oh my gosh. Like, it takes you 21 weeks to get the license to kill.
Yeah. Or 2 years to become a nurse. Like,
why do we take everything else so seriously? And it's like, that would be a simple fix. Cause, I mean, if I was, say I was racist, right? Say that I just was. Say I didn't really like black people. I thought maybe like, oh, they're super violent. They're the issue with our society. They bring our value down. They make America look bad. They're lazy, blah, 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 right? What? I could spend 6 months getting, a badge. Mm-hmm. I could spend 6 months doing that. Like, 6 months is nothing. Yeah. And we act like these people are just, oh, it's so dangerous to be a cop. Da-da-da. No, they legally can kill you.
Yeah. And get away with it.
When you're doing nothing. So, no, don't tell me it's dangerous to be a cop. No, cops are dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, that's true.
Oh, my God. Okay, so anyways, I've gone on and on about this enough. Okay, so now we will move on to our What's Being Slept On segment.
So I strongly suggest that you wake the fuck up.
Okay, I had to take a couple deep breaths. It's pretty wound up. Okay, so now for our What's Being Slept On segment, we will be discussing the power of saying no. And so, like I said at the start of the podcast, I do not like conflict. I will grit my teeth, put on a fake smile, and say yes. Mm-hmm. But in the inside, be like, oh, I'm going to find a way to get out of this. Between now and then, I'm going to find a way to get out of this situation. So, yeah, we wanted to kind of, I guess, rounding out or finishing up, 2018 as we start to think about the selves that we want to bring into 2019 mm-hmm. and the things that we want to leave behind. Saying yes to everything and being miserable is one of the things that we want to leave behind.
Yes.
Okay? So many of us feel compelled to agree to every request that we get and would rather juggle a million jobs and tasks and events than refuse to help or be there for friends or family or whoever, even if we are left with no time for ourselves. So saying no was one of our self-care tips in episode 10 on mental health and self-care. So if you haven't listened to that, or if you have and it's been a while and you need a refresher, I would say to revisit because it's important. Learning to say no is part of self-respect and healthy boundary making.
Yes.
Right? So you think about it like this, right? So I've said yes to going places with friends that I haven't wanted to go, and then been there and been like a party pooper, right? And so I'm sure in that moment, they probably are like, oh, we could have left her at home. We could have done without her being here and not really talking to anybody and all of this stuff. And so you are doing yourself a favor, and you're also doing them a favor.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's ask ourselves why we continue to say yes. Why do we continue to say yes to things that we know we don't want to do or don't have time to do, don't know how to do?
Yeah.
You don't have the energy to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Ebony and I were thinking about like some of the reasons why we continue to say yes, because we both agreed that, like, especially for me, this is an issue that I talk a lot in therapy, because I have a hard time saying no to family and friends, and even like school things. And so one of the things, so a couple of the reasons we wanted to like go over is first, I continue to say yes, maybe because I believe that saying no will make me seem uncaring and even selfish. I think maybe a lot of us believe that if you say no to someone asking you for a favor, asking you to cat sit, asking you to help them move, asking you
that's a big one,
to take you to the airport, asking you.
That's a big one too.
Yeah, like it seems like if you say no, that person's gonna think you're selfish.
Yeah.
Even though, and I'm not saying like maybe maybe you want to say no because you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like for me, I like can't do it. Like, because I would be spreading myself too thin.
Yeah.
Other times it's a fear of being disliked, criticized, or risking a friendship.
Yeah.
And so maybe you think if I say, if someone asks you, hey, do you want to come on this trip with me? Do you want to come to this concert? Do you want to do this with me? Do you want to come with me to do this? You feel like if you say no, you're going to risk that person not wanting to be your friend anymore, or they're going to it's going to make you unlikable in some way. Also a fear of disappointing people. And this is something for me about school, maybe work. Sometimes people ask too much from me, and I feel that if I say no, I'm going to be disappointing them, even if it comes at an expense. So, for example, if I have a lot of things going on in my personal life, but my advisor asks me to do some extra work or to go to this meeting or to go to this lecture, or if your boss asks you to stay late, or if he asks you to go to this conference or do something with them, it's like you don't want to disappoint them, and so you sometimes continue to say yes. And then lastly, people pleasing, which is I am a notorious people pleaser, and I just want everyone to be happy, even if it comes at the expense of me. And so it's something that I've been working on in therapy as well, is trying to avoid seeing me as only being likable if I am doing things for other people. So there are lots of different reasons why we continue to say yes. But with that in mind, we wanted to talk about like why it's important to say no and why it can actually be good for you. And then to me, the most important is like, how do I say no? Because even sometimes when I'm like, I know I can't do this, I know this is too much, like there's just no way I can fit 3 things at the same time, but I don't know who to say no to. It's like, how do I do it?
Yeah. All of those, all of those reasons resonate with me. And I think for different, I think it's like different reasons for different sets of people, you know, like for friends, it's like, okay, I feel like I should do these things for my friends because I don't want, like I think that a lot of times I'm unsure of how people define our friendship. Like, so is our friendship defined based on, how much we do X, Y, and Z together? And if I don't do X, Y, and Z with them, will they question whether or not we're friends? Or will they feel like, oh yeah, like Ebony ain't really doing X, Y, and Z lately. Like she hasn't really been, or I asked her to do this for me and she didn't. And then I think for like my advisor, who often asks me to do things that I don't want to do. I do have a fear of being criticized or like not meeting whatever standards, which actually I've learned recently is not the case. Like they're not, I think that you may assume that someone, will judge you or criticize you for saying no to something, when in actuality, the reason that they asked you to do it or that they proposed to do it is because they don't want to do it in the first place. Yeah. You know? So it's like, oh, can you do this for me? Because I actually don't want to do it, you know, and it needs to be done. And so they're kind of putting their work on you, or maybe they didn't care whether or not it was done and they just kind of put it out there, and the fact that you accepted meant that you put more work on yourself, when in actuality it was like, oh, okay, we could do, like, for instance, sometimes my advisor will ask me to meet at times that I don't want to meet, but because I don't really feel like it's an option, and I feel like, you know, I mean, I am the student, so it's like, why should I be able to, you know, insist on what time we meet? Sometimes I will be like, okay, sure. And then she'll either change the time of the meeting later or cancel it. And it's like, oh, well, we didn't necessarily need to meet at that time in the first place. Yeah. So sometimes, yeah, you might surprise yourself by, you know, I'm over here talking about saying no like I do it. So I just need y'all to know that I am not an expert at this either. So how do you know when to say no? Yeah, that's hard. How do you know? Because it would suck if this fear that you have of saying no, say like you decide to, you know what, I'm gonna put my foot down and I am gonna start saying no to things. And then you find out that this was actually the one time that person was gonna judge you or criticize you or decide, you know what, you a fake friend, I'm done with this friendship. Yeah. So that would suck.
Yeah, and then what if your friend really needs you? Yeah. And it's like, is this one of those times that I need to drop what I'm doing to be there for my friend?
That's hard.
Or is this one of those times where I can be honest and be like, hey, because, you know, I've had several of those, like, calls or texts that are like, hey, can we talk? And then I'm like, oh, God, I'm in the middle of this deadline, but you sound like maybe you really need me, so what should I do? Yeah,
and then next thing you know, you find yourself on the phone for 2 hours, just shooting the shit, and you have not been working.
Ooh,
yes.
So one of the things, so some of the questions you should ask yourself about where is this a time that I should say no is, one, like, do you have the time? Yeah. It's not bad to say, hey, I would love to talk. Can I call you in 30 minutes? Yeah. Or, hey, I'm about to go into an appointment or a meeting. Can I call you after at 2? Because in that way, you're telling that person, like, yes, I can be there for you. Right now, I just can't. And then another question to ask yourself is, why are you saying yes? Are you saying yes because you want to do it, or are you saying yes because you feel obligated to? And so if someone's asking you if you already have plans and someone's asking you to do something else, or someone's asking you to help out or to I don't know. Like, I always go to, like, the moving in the airport, because those are, like, really...
Or even, like, something simple like going out, you know? And I think we, you know, going back again to our self-care episode that we had, right? So sometimes I say at the end... So Fridays and Saturdays are typically the days that people go out places, right? But I usually like my Friday night and my Saturday to recover from the week. From like working and all that stuff. And so if it's like, oh, I don't want to hang out because I am just hanging out with myself, that a lot of times to me doesn't seem like a legitimate, you know, reason not to go hang out with this person. Yeah. But then you end up going out, and then say you are not having a good time, or say, you know, I don't know, whatever it was sucked in the first place, then you're like, dang, I could have really been at home, like, you know, decompressing from the week. Sometimes that's hard too. And it's like, so how do you know what are legitimate reasons
Yeah. And so some of the things that I was in trying to figure out for myself, not only through therapy, but through like different articles that we were reading to prepare for this episode, is like some of the things some of these people were saying is that you have to learn how to value your time.
Yeah.
And then to know your priorities. And so, like in Ebony's example, her priority was to self-care. And she doesn't have a lot of time to be able to engage in that self-care. And for some people, self-care is going out and, you know, being social. For other people, it's not. It's like staying at home and shutting down.
Social is work sometimes.
Yeah, and social is work for some people.
Yeah.
And so I think that you just have to ask yourself, and I don't think that like every time someone asks you to go out, you should say no. Or every time someone asks you for a favor, you should say no. But you have to look at it the other way too. Like every time someone asks you doesn't mean you have to say yes.
Yeah.
And so I think like, for example, the going out thing, you can tell yourself, okay, I'll dedicate like 2 weekends a week, a month to like doing friend stuff, or I'll dedicate, you know, I'll make sure if it's a really important event, someone's birthday, someone is from out of town, to really make the effort. Or if, you know, this person never asked for favors and they're asking me to help them move, they don't have anyone else.
Thing. Yeah.
Or, you know, this person doesn't have a car and they really need me to take them to the airport and I have a trip coming up and maybe I can ask them, or something like that, where you can say, okay, like this is a time that I can do it. But I would say if it interferes negatively with your self-care or with your time or with any priorities that you may have, then that's maybe a time where you can say no. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how we can say that. But we just wanted to just kind of let you guys know that's something that I've learned, is that saying no does not make you a bad person. And so I think that sometimes we feel like saying no is negative because usually it's associated as a negative word. But your self-worth does not depend on how much you do for other people. And if in the relationship, it seems like it does, like it seems like they, you know, are not reacting positively to you not being able to do things, then that's more a reflection of the type of relationship that you have. And that could just be because you are the yes person. And so that dynamic has become I take because I ask. And then it's been that way for so long that you don't realize it. And so when you start saying no, the dynamic changes. And if that person's not okay with it and is making it seem like, you know, the relationship is dependent on you doing things, then that's where you it's past the saying no and more into is this a healthy relationship that I have? And that could be with family too. I think that, you know, boundaries are important to make. And if you make yourself available, you will become the available person. And so if, you know, I used to just like pick up my phone, like when my mom called, no matter what time it was, I would pick up. And, you know, in therapy and stuff, I would say like, you know, sometimes I'd be at dinner, like I'd leave the restaurant, go outside and talk to my mom for like an hour, come back in. I didn't eat my food, or my partner had just cooked dinner. My mom called me. I go talk to her. It takes 30 minutes. My partner finished eating and I eat by myself. And so what I had to do is I had to not answer during dinner time, or I don't answer if I'm working on something and I'm like, okay, I just got 1 more hour. I'll call her back in an hour. And so I think that, and, you know, you'd be surprised at how, like, you know, I would talk to, and now my mom says, you know, she's passive aggressive. So sometimes she'll be like, oh, I can't call Zalma because she's at dinner, you know, how that's important to her. But it's,
it's hilarious.
But it's a boundary that she respects. Yeah. So like, if I don't answer, every once in a while, she'll still try to call me during dinner and I don't answer and it's okay.
Yeah.
And then the fact that she recognizes that and is like, well, I just know that during dinner time, Zalma doesn't answer. And whereas before, a couple years ago, that would have seemed impossible. It would be like, I have to be available to my mom because it could be important, or I have to be available because I don't want her to be mad. I don't want her to feel like I'm not supportive. I don't want her to feel like I'm rejecting her. And what I've learned through therapy is that my self-worth as a daughter does not depend on how much I do for her or my availability to her. And I'm the one that has to set the boundaries. And now that I set the boundaries, it like setting the pattern every time she calls, I don't have to say like, hey, I can't talk now. I just like call her back later.
Yeah. And the pattern thing I think is really important because I've talked to people who, you know, I think you get to a point where you could get burned out, right?
Yeah.
And so, or you can get into a situation where, say, you're never the one to ask for something, and then one time you're like stuck between a rock and a hard place. You need to ask for something, but you've set up this dynamic to where you are the person that gives, and then when you need and that person is not there for you, you're like, how dare that person not be there for me when I've always been there for them?
Yeah.
And the reason that you think that, though, is because you've set up this dynamic.
Yeah.
You know, and so maybe they genuinely don't have the time. They can't do it right now or whatever. But because you feel like you're the giver, you feel like they're not a true friend to you. And so it's like, no, in order to not set yourself up for that kind of failure, be realistic with yourself and only do the things that you can or want to do. Don't constantly put yourself in difficult positions where you end up ultimately feeling like you're being taken advantage of because the person could maybe be taking advantage of you, but then you could also be allowing or setting up that person to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's hard to come to those kinds of terms, especially when you are the person that gives and you're like, no, like they should, you know, move mountains to help me because I always do that for them. But do they even know that you do it for them?
Yeah.
Do they even know that you're going so far out of your way to do these things? Like they may not know. And for them, they probably wouldn't do that. They probably would not be moving mountains to do the same things that you've done. So it may not even like make logical sense to them. I think that one thing that I've seen with like, you know, looking at my friends and stuff like that is there are also differences in terms of how many people they grew up with. So for people that have a lot of siblings and stuff like that, they think very differently than people that grew up as the only child or even as the baby. Yeah. You know, so I think that that's a way to think about it too. Like if you are someone that grew up as the oldest, you know, you may be used to doing things for other people and helping them and all that stuff. And then if you have a friend or a best friend or something like that, that's the baby, they probably grew up with a much different dynamic being the one that got the help and all of that. So if y'all are trying to merge these things and you don't understand why your friend, you know, doesn't get why you need things or why you're always being the giver, look at the way that they grew up or the way that they think and all that stuff. And that might allow you to be more empathetic, I guess, to whatever role they fill.
Yeah.
Or whatever role y'all fill together. Yes. Okay. So how do you say no?
Yeah.
Like what is the actual process? What does this look like in practice?
Yeah. Cause it's really easy to say, just say no. Yeah. But it's different so we came up with different strategies because I feel like different things and different people require different types
and different
of
people
ways.
On both sides. Yeah. So think about the kind of person that you are. Yeah. And think about the kind of person that you're saying no to. Yeah. You know, to determine which method is best. Because don't force yourself to say no in ways that like make you uncomfortable. You know? So if face to face is hard for you, if somebody's saying, hey, can you pick up my kid from daycare, or can you babysit my kid, or can you go and feed my cat or take my cat out for a walk, and you're uncomfortable with that, you know, you're uncomfortable with just being like, no. Yeah. You know, if you're uncomfortable with that, don't do it. Don't do that. We'll talk about some potential ways of like navigating that.
Yeah. And so I think like one of the things for me is like when to say no face to face, when to say no via text, and when to say no via email. Mm-hmm. And for me, for school things, I definitely use email to say no. Yeah. So like with my advisor, I feel like it's easier to say, I'm sorry, I couldn't get to what you told me until, you know, later in the week, so it's going to be a little late. Or I'm sorry, there's just no way I can make this talk that you want me to go to via email. And I always find that it just seems less to me. I get anxious, I think, via everything, like
Yeah.
if I'm face to face,
Yeah.
email or text, but it definitely like helps just to get a response via email for things from my advisor, or from like if someone asks me, like someone recently asked me to be like a research mentor,
Mhm.
and I couldn't do it because, you know, I'm pregnant. And so it felt so much easier just to email them and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'd love to, but I'm actually about to go on leave, and so I won't be able to help you, but good luck.
Yeah.
And then the person was really nice and was just like, thank you anyways, you know, I've asked a couple other people, so I'll wait for the response. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes me feel better.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing that I was talking about earlier, where it's like, you know, sometimes we think the stakes are higher than they really are.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like that, you know, with my advisor too, where like she'll ask me like, oh, go to this thing or go do that. And like, it's just a suggestion. But to me, it's like, oh my God, like she wants me to do this thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I can't do it. Or like, I'm doing something on that day that's not school related. How will I say no to this? You know? And for her, it's just like, oh yeah, it was just a suggestion.
Yeah.
You know, it came across my docket. Like, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Whatever. Yeah. And so it's like, you might be blowing it up more than it is, feeling like, oh my God, I have to say yes to this because, you know, this is all the stakes are on this. Like, if I say no, everything's going to crumble, when in actuality, the person that's asking you is just, you know, it's just like, you're the first person that popped into their mind.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not that big of a deal to them.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you have to necessarily explain yourself?
Yeah.
So I am someone that always explains myself. And one of the points that we are gonna come to later is to be direct and not lie. I will explain myself even if it means that I have to lie. Which, you know, is not, and you know, it's like, people are constantly getting on me about this, you know, where, like, say my partner is constantly just like, just say no.
Yeah.
Like, just say no. Like, what can they do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, but I feel like what if they ask questions? I feel like I need an explanation, da-da-da-da-da. And I think recently this is after I turned 27, I was like, you know what? I'm grown.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I can't do that, or I won't be able to make it, or, you know, I can't meet this deadline, or this, you know, these 2 days that you've given me to write this is unrealistic.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes but you can explain yourself into a hole sometimes, which is also something to be wary of. And I don't know. That's all I have to say about explanations.
And I used to super explain myself too. Like, last night, I started feeling very sick, and this morning it just did not get better. Yeah. And so now I'm just like, I'm sorry, I won't be able to make the meeting. Could we reschedule? Yeah. And it's crazy how little people ask. Like, people usually aren't like, oh yeah, why? What happened? Yeah. Unless, I mean, friends might, but like in terms of
not
having,
like supervisors.
Yeah.
They probably don't even want to know.
I mean, and just like learning that I can, you know, I don't, or just telling my friends like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't go to this. I really wanted to, but it doesn't look like I'll be able to make it. Yeah. And then that's it. Like, a lot of times my friends aren't going to be like, oh yeah, well, you said you were, like, what changed? Yeah. I mean, there are some people that are going to do that. There are some people. You don't always have to explain yourself. And even if you have a valid reason, like even if you know, had to bail someone out, which has happened to me, and I had to cancel a meeting, or you had to, you know, your dog got sick or attacked, and you had to take him to the vet, and so you can't go to this meeting. Like, it's fine to just tell people, like, hey, I can't do it, and not always feel like you have to offer some sort of, like, justification, because, like, everyone's entitled to, like, not have to, and
sometimes, I guess I also think sometimes offering an explanation can get you into a hole, because what if the person doesn't think your explanation is good enough? Like, maybe it's like, oh, well, I mean, if that's what my reason was, I would still do it. Yeah. So, you know, so it's like, sometimes it's better to just be like, you know what? I can't do it. and like, I deem that to be reason enough.
Yeah.
So take it or leave it, rather than being like, oh, you know, like over explaining and then finding out that, you know, this person is like, well, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I really need you to, you know.
Yeah. And it sets a pattern.
Yeah.
So next you can always compromise. And so sometimes, you know, if your friend wants to go out this weekend, but you're not really feeling it, you can say, hey, this weekend doesn't really work. Would next weekend be better? Or I could even do the weekend after that. Or even, you know, if someone asks you to take them to the airport at 5 a.m., but they land at 7 p.m. and you're like, hey, I can't take you to the airport, but I can definitely pick you up if you need me to. Or if someone's moving, like on a Thursday night, and you're like, hey, you know, I can't really help you on Thursday, but I'd be more than happy to, you know, help you unpack later on in the week. Or it's just like, you know, and I'm not saying like every time you say no, you have to say, oh, but I can do this. Yeah. But it's like on those times where you're like, I actually would help, I just can't, it could be a nice compromise to say. So for me, sometimes, you know, I have friends who live all over the country because of being in grad school. You make friends with people and then they leave. And so, you know, I have friends who live in completely different time zones, and sometimes there are times that are convenient. Yeah. Like California, it's 7 there and it's 9 here. Yeah. And so sometimes they want to just like video chat and do things, and have to be like, well, it's 9 p.m. my time. Kind of and so what I just do is I say like, I can't, you know, this week I'm just kind of trying to focus on trying to get this done, but I could definitely chat Saturday or Sunday between these times. Would any of those work? And that way you're not just saying no, but you're, you know, taking care of yourself, not straining yourself too much, but also giving an opportunity for it to still happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Okay. So practice saying no.
Yeah.
So practice saying no to strangers.
Yes.
For example, people trying to sell you something over the phone or at the store.
Even that's hard for me.
Yeah. Sometimes when people call and try to sell me, I just hang up.
I know. Or I used to listen to them and then at the end be like, you know what? No, maybe not at this time, but like I still would feel so bad. I'm like, I'm going to listen to them and answer their questions like I'm going. There's so many times I've given my number and email and been like, you know, I may be interested when I know there's no way I'm going to get new windows.
Yeah, the hard thing is that people, you're talking about those kinds of people. Yeah. So I'm thinking about people that, like, they are salesmen and they will constantly, like, even if you say no, they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can interest you in, no, I don't want any of your things. Like, I don't want
people at the mall who are like, hey,
and they just walk up. Yeah, the mall is hard. The people at the kiosk are like, hey, come over here. And they just come up to you and, like, or, like, if you, like, going, like, say, somewhere, and I'm thinking about this because we were just out of the country, right? And they constantly trying to hustle you with stuff. Yeah. And they'll just come up and, like, hand you things.
And then you have to buy it.
And then just stand there, like, you know, and I'm like, no, don't just put something in my hand. I don't want it. Yeah. You know, and then you got to try to figure out how to say, I mean, and luckily no is the same in every language. So you're just constantly saying no. Well, maybe not every language. You're just constantly like, no thanks, no thank you, no thank you. And then they're trying to sell you something else. Yeah. So they're like, oh, American, my friend. And then they try to like, you know, warm up to you or butter you up. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, I still don't want this thing.
Yeah.
So saying
no to strangers, practicing. So, and if you realize that it's even hard to say no to those people, that's when it's kind of a red flag indicator of like, I might have a people-pleasing thing, because if I can't even say no to people I have no like bond or connection to, then it may just be me instead of everyone needs things from me.
And I mean, you know, not wanting to hurt someone's feelings is, you know, a good personality trait.
Yeah.
It's just that it can ultimately negatively impact you, because you could get burnt out or you could get disappointed.
Yeah. And then